The real reason you're not making the money you should, it's not the clients, it's not the economy, it is your estimating system, and it's costing you big time. Stick with me because I'm about to walk you through a system that's helped GCs across the country turn bids into bank. All right, so today we're going to be walking through the exact process to a complete estimating system that's going to increase your profits, help have a repeatable system that you can delegate, and I'm going to be going through what all the different components are. So there's three types of estimates, and then there's a number of different ways to incorporate all of these into a streamlined system. So the three types of estimates are: one is a ballpark estimate. I'm going to be diving into these in more detail a bit later, but essentially a ballpark is just a figure of scale of this project going to cost 100,000, a million, or 10 million, right? Like what's the ballpark that we're working with here. Then there's a rough budget. Rough budget is something where you've got line items, you've working from just your standard base pricing, but it's thought out. You've done your takeoffs, and it's a pretty solid estimate, but it's not 100% drilled down. And then finally, we've got the detailed type of estimate. The detailed estimate is going to be one where you've tendered the bids, you've gone through two suppliers, the clients have gone through selections. It is a very accurate and fine-tuned estimate. Now, if you're providing free estimates, you're going to want to know the difference between these three, because if you are providing a detailed estimate for free, you are spending a lot of time and probably getting a lot of frustration going through all this work only to have the client say, no, it's too much, or no, we're going to go with someone else. So I'm going to be sharing with you the process of how we make sure that we use this three-tiered estimating process to guide the client from one step to the next, always be clear of where things are at with that client, and help them kind of guide them into the sale and build that relationship over time, so that when it comes down to the presenting the construction contract or proposal in front of them, is really a no-brainer option for them to move forward with you and your company. Now, the whole estimating process, it really starts with the first consultation that you have with the client. This could be a consultation in their home. This is typically if you're doing large projects as a GC, home builds, large remodels, whatever it may be, you're probably going to meet the client at their home so they can show you A, what their home is like right now and how they want to change it, or B, go through the plans or the design of their new project. So there is a whole process and science behind this in order to get good information and set yourself up for success. So before getting to this home site meeting, you should have pre like qualifying questions so that you're not going to these home meetings and realizing later that this is not going to be a project that's going to work because the client is not qualified. So just as a side note, they must be qualified before, putting in the work. You always want to make sure that whatever stage of the process, there's a high chance that they're going to move forward with the next stage, and you guide them through that. So the first thing that you're going to do typically is a walkthrough. This could be a home walkthrough, as far as you're going to walk around. They want their basement remodeled. They want their home remodeled. Let's see your house. Let's see what your plans are, whatever needs to get done. If you are a home builder, you're going to do like a walkthrough of their design plans if they have designs in place. If not, then you'll probably send them a questionnaire of what kind of house you're looking for: two-story, bungalow, whatever it may be, right? So you're going to do some sort of walkthrough and kind of clarify what they're looking for and how things are set up. Like I mentioned, you're going to have a discovery questionnaire. So a questionnaire is a really professional way to get a lot of information from a client, and you could go through this with them, depending on the scale of the business, or there's something that you could send them for them to do on their own time beforehand, before the site meeting, so that when you get to the meeting, you can kind of review it from them. Okay, you're looking for a 2,500 square foot home, and you want it facing this way, and you want this many bedrooms, and you kind of walk through and just clarify and give your opinion on everything. From there, you're going to want to have some sort of like marketing material. It shouldn't be like we're sitting down to watch the family vacation pictures, and they're going to yawn their head off as they just don't care. But something quick, easy, a brochure, or maybe a presentation on your laptop or tablet or what have you. Just a quick run through. This is our business. These are the type of clients we work with. Here's some of the completed projects that we've done before. This is our overall process of the estimating and the building and whatever, just to give them a big overview and kind of position your company as professional, as you've got a process, as they're similar to all the other clients that you've worked with, and you work with clients like theirs in their location building this type of house or whatever it may be. So you want to be utilizing something like that. You always want to be positioning yourself as the expert in the conversation as well. So this isn't just menu type thing where you go to a restaurant, it's like, I'll have the, double pound beef burger or steak with side of potatoes and salad or whatever, right? This isn't like a list of, okay, you want this, check, you want this, check. You need to be giving your advice of, well, you're looking for this size of house. Maybe have you considered, this? Or instead of having a basement suite like granny suite, maybe you want a detached, secondary dwelling unit or something like that, right? So give your opinion. If they're getting a kitchen remodel, what's your opinion as far as the best type of countertops or how to knock out a wall or whatever, right? So you want to be positioning yourself as the expert in the conversation, not just taking down an order of things that they might want. From here, this is where you will go into a ballpark budget. If you're not able to do this on the spot, you should be able to create some sort of spreadsheet very easily or use your project management software to create a very quick ballpark budget range for the client so that really early on you can have that budget conversation. With the qualifying questionnaire that you've had with the client, you should already have some sort of an indication of like if they are in the right, area as far as like ballpark. So what is their budget? Is it usually a range of whatever it may be? So if they're looking for a new home, they're looking for one around 500 to 700,000, or they're looking for one from like 1 to 1.5 million. So in the qualifying questionnaire, you will have like these big kind of brackets and categories. And then the ballpark budget is something a little bit more refined, typically working off square footage of pricing. So if they're looking to get a new home and you know that they want something a little bit higher end on the luxury, you could let them know, hey, based off of the square footage you said and the location, you're probably looking at somewhere between 800 to $1 million, or 1.2 to 1.4 million dollars for this new home build that you're looking at. So you should be able to get that out very early. And if they're like, wow, that's like way over our budget, we were looking for something around 600,000, then it's kind of like back to the drawing board a little bit. Okay, you said you want 2,500 square feet. Are you comfortable with going down to maybe 2,000 square feet, or maybe having, unfinished garage or basement, or not doing, so much like very minimal landscaping, or cutting back on certain things now so you can still get the home that you want, but maybe have room for upgrading later on or whatever, right? So getting that out of the way early on, of course, because as much as you want to keep this sale alive, you don't want to walk into and doing a bunch of estimating or designing for something that's just not feasible, and you know that you're not even in ballpark range. It's just a bad experience for you because you're going to be doing this work for them. Bad experience for them because you don't want that huge sticker shock when you come back and they're not even close to what their budget is. So that's how you use the ballpark budget. It's quick numbers, back of the napkin kind of stuff. You can create a spreadsheet very easily to kind of highlight the big points in a project, or create like a ballpark template for whatever typical type of projects you do. From there, for this process, you're going to collect this information from them. Your admin person, or whoever is kind of in the back into your business there, is going to create a client folder for this client, and they're going to present a pre-construction service agreement. And this home site visit, your whole kind of purpose of it is to guide the client into a PCSA agreement. So pre-construction service agreement. You've kind of gone over what they want. You've presented your company. You've put yourself as the expert. Now you have to let them know, okay, next step for us, we can do a more detailed budget for you. We can get you into a design with our designer. If you don't have a designer, you can just partner with a designer or what have you. But you need to be even if you're not like a design build company, you need to be partnered with design so that you can integrate that and solve that problem. The first problem for the client is they don't know how much it's going to cost. They don't know how to do construction. They don't know anything about design. They're kind of lost. So you need to present the whole package of, we're not just the builder to contact after you've got everything designed. We're going to help you with the design process. Part of that is getting a PCSA signed. So that's the kind of first sale. If you want a guide on how to get a PCSA in place and how to present that, check out the links in the description below. In the description, I've got a link. You can get our free planner. It's a guide for PCSA of how to put one together, how to structure it, how to create that offer, and what it'll look like essentially. So go pick up that resource, click the link in the description below. All right. So what is in a PCSA package? You are going to include these typical things: architecture and interior design. So whether they have architectural, wherever they're at in the design process, if they don't have anything in place, then you need to get them in touch with your architect, your interior designer. But you only do that after they've designed a PCSA, because you want to make sure that you are their builder of choice, that they're going with you for the PCSA, pre-construction and everything like that. So architectural interior design is going to be included. You're going to include a budget. You're going to include scheduling. You're going to reserve them a spot in your pipeline. So you have to build this value to them where it's like, wow, this builder is super put together. This PCSA makes total sense. And we need to do this right away. Create some urgency. And you do that with the reserved pipeline spot. So with the with that, it's like, if without this PCSA, we can't get in your pipeline, we're scheduling projects out and we want to make sure that we can get to your project, on time, and that we can flow everything very nicely with the scheduling. So with this PCSA, we will reserve your spot in our production pipeline. You need to be able to sell this at the end of the day. And this is an easier sale than the full proposal. This may seem new to you if you haven't done this before. And it may seem like, oh, that's gonna be hard to kind of get them into an agreement when we're not even like ready to build yet, or what have you. The truth is, getting them into a PCSA, that is maybe a couple $1,000 to maybe $10,000, $20,000 sale, right? So it's a lot easier to sell them on, hey, all you've got to be, putting into this is we're going to do value add design. You're going to know all this stuff, how much it's going to cost. We're going to put you in touch with our expert designers who we've worked with many times. And all we need from you is a retainer, $2,000, $5,000, whatever it may be. So you're only selling maybe a $5,000 or $10,000 product. Maybe the full PCSA, if you're doing like a home build, maybe that's going to cost them 15, 20 grand. And you let them know that ahead of time, but you're only going to be charging for services rendered, typically speaking. If you wanted to like have more of a package, if you do like a certain level of remodels and it's like $2,500, we give you plans, we give you, we do the permits, whatever else. It's, you structure this how it makes sense for your business, but you're presenting this as a package for them to purchase. It's kind of low level as far as like they're not agreeing to go ahead with $800,000 of a home build. They're only agreeing to go ahead with like $10,000, $20,000. And during this design process, if the feasibility is not correct or something's out of line, they can walk away at any time. They're not held to a long-term contract. They're not held to doing the construction with you. You are simply going through this whole design process so they have everything in place, and then they can make a decision as far as which builder they want to go ahead with. Of course, after working with you, if you've done everything correctly and you've kind of built that budget for them, there should be no opposition for you to then just move into the construction contract and be their builder of choice. So like I mentioned, you can do a retainer or flat fee, cost plus pricing, however you want to structure that. All right, so now we're going to get into the actual estimating. And can you see how like a lot of builders or remodelers, they skip kind of those first two steps of nailing down the process of like the walkthrough as well as the PCSA. Without those two components, it makes all the rest of this, you're just a commodity at that point. If you're just providing a free budget or estimate for them and then hoping they go ahead with the project, you are just in line with every other builder out there or anybody else that they can get a hold of and call for a free estimate, and they're going to be shopping around. They still may do that to some degree, but it's less likely. And you're also positioning yourself as an in-demand builder with a process who solves a bigger problem than the other guys who are just doing the building part of it. You're also solving the design. Even though you are not a design company, you're going to pass it off to one of your partners in another company that does design, but you are structured that way to be able to help that client from the first step to the last step. So the next phase of the estimating process is the rough budgeting. Now, depending on how many leads come in and how your process works and how well you are kind of at the sale of the pre-construction agreement, you may provide a free rough budget to them. And this is going to be worked from a template. It's going to have a lot of standard kind of base level pricing that you can offer as a free budget to them, or you can work it into your PCSA. It's totally up to you how you structure that. If you are providing the rough budget for free, you kind of go above and beyond. Again, if you're trying to compete with other contractors or things like that, then that may be an option by kind of giving more incentive up front to continue to work with you or providing more value from the client's perspective before you're asking for that PCSA. Now, for rough budgeting, you're going to need project management and takeoff software. The three that I like to use is JobTread, Build Exact, and Contract Foreman. Those are my top three for residential general contractors. If you're a commercial contractor, then things like Procore is the big name and the popular one out there. There are other ones as well. JetBuild, I believe, is another good one. But you'll need a good solid project management software that has the takeoff software either built into it or a separate software. For takeoff software, there is Bluebeam, was probably my top pick, and then there's also Square, which is pretty straightforward. PlanSwift, another great one. PlanSwift really solid as well. So you need to get your proper software stack in place. You want to then set up a big estimating template. So your template should be pretty much as big as you can make it because it's a lot easier deleting things out of an estimate than it is to add them in. So if you are a home builder, you want to have a pretty robust home build estimate, and then you can just take things out. Like, if they're not having a swimming pool or if they're not having a detached garage or whatever, you can just delete those sections out of there fairly easily. Of course, you could have different, like have a really big template and then have like maybe some pared down templates for like more basic type builder and stuff like that. But at the very least, have one big, good estimating template to work from, and then ideally have additional ones as you build out your systems. Cost codes and price database. This is sort of the next step to get cost codes in place so you can do job costing, very important, as well as just keep things categorized and more organized. The price database, there's a lot of resources and a lot of these project management softwares have that like live pricing built in either from suppliers or from like an RS Means or OneBill, I believe is another one through some of these other databases. So those are good for materials typically, but not so good necessarily for labor costing and specifics like pricing that for you and your business in your area. So you're going to want to build out your database. And you may be really experienced and kind of know the pricing and know the whatever codes and stuff like this. But the reason you want to build all this out in a systemized way is because the whole purpose of this is that you're going to pass this off to somebody else eventually in your business. If you're still doing all the estimating, you're going to want to hire an estimator or have a project manager who can take this estimating system and run with it and get this off your plate, as soon as possible and focus on more high level stuff besides just estimating, which is probably, fresh air for you, but that's why you want to take the time to make this estimating process really good. For rough budgeting, you're just going to use allowances. So $10 per square foot for tile or 5 or 15 or whatever, right? But with the rough budgeting, you want to keep the pricing very minimal because this first kind of budget you're going to provide for the client, you've done a ballpark, but that's really just a range to sort of see if they're in ballpark. The rough budget, you want to keep it low because you don't want to scare off the client. You don't want to come in super high, especially if they're going to get competing bids where it's like, well, you said 1.2, this other contractor is saying they can do it for 1 million. So we're kind of leading towards them and we're not sure if we can move forward if you're saying it's 1.2. Even knowing very well that other builder that's quoting 1 million is probably out to lunch and it's probably going to end up costing 1.2 or more. And in the end, even though you're more correct, you still want to, you want to be reasonable, but you want to let them know like, this is kind of base materials. This is what we can build this house for. We can come in at 1.1 million or a million, but this is sort of your baseline. If you have, want more high-end finishes or you make changes to this, or, you want more expensive kind of fixtures and stuff like that, this price can potentially go up over time as we finalize the design and the selections. But you want to start kind of lower, and then you can always add to that price. If they're like, we're okay with 1 million, and then they can see how their decisions are driving that price, you will probably end up at 1.2 by the time you get down to the detailed design. But at least the client understands that it's their decisions that have influenced the price. And if they want a lower price, they have to, accommodate with lower selections or different design or what have you. So you want to be very clear in the estimate, this is an allowance. One thing that a lot of builders and especially newer ones forget is you want to make sure you have project management time in your estimate. And it should be very clear I like to have it right in there so the client can see it. Some people are like, I don't want to have management time because other builders don't, and the client's going to wonder why they're getting charged for this. Your markup or your margin, however you want to call it, there is a difference, but that markup that you put on top of everything should not cover the project management, even if you don't have a project manager, because someday, hopefully soon, you're going to hire a project manager and you're going to need to pay them whatever it is for to run the project. That could be 20, 30, 40, 50 more $1,000 to manage a project for you. You need to have that in your estimate. And the way to do this is how many hours per day does it take you to manage a project? Talking with the client, calling the trades, doing site meetings, meeting inspectors, doing your own quality checks, all this kind of stuff, right? So is that 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a day to manage a project? Make sure you build that into your estimate. And then your margins as far as your overhead. So things like your overhead should be built into your project too, because if your markup is 15% and you have a 12% overhead for your company, you are going to be you're going to be losing money essentially, because the overhead is a margin, whereas the markup is on top of the price. And there's a difference. So if you have, let's say you're running at 15% overhead, that is considerable to a 15% margin. If you mark up your estimate 15%, your margin is more like, I believe, 12% or something like that. So there's a difference between those numbers, and you probably need to be in the 20% markup range to hit a margin of 15%. So really, you should be marking up like 25% because you need some contingency in there as well as some profit at the end of the day. So make sure you're accounting for that, and you've got some contingency or miscellaneous. I like to put a little bit of miscellaneous labor, miscellaneous materials, things like that, because as you know, there's always things that go unaccounted for, little things that pop up in a build, and you don't want to be out of pocket for that stuff. Also, you want to be able to smooth it out if maybe something comes up that's a little bit of a gray area, that technically you could do a change order for the client, but it's only like $1,000 here or a couple $100 here, and it's like you've got that missed budget to take care of it without doing a whole bunch of different change orders for the client. So after you've completed the rough budget and provided that to the client, now they have a good idea and you've got past any sticker shock, any changes or things they may be asking for. You'll now move into the detailed budgeting. By the time you get to the detailed budgeting, this is where you definitely need a pre-construction service agreement in place so that you're getting paid for your time being put in. It'll take you hours to go through selections, changes, whatever else that may go into the detailed budgeting process. So first thing will be tendering bid requests. So you're going to be sending out bid requests to your subcontractors, and these should be templated. Either templated documents or using your project management software have templated wording that gets sent out so that every sub trade is getting the same information, but also that you have standards of practice so that when you send it to maybe somebody new, they know this is the level of quality that you want. This is the way that they should be doing their project. Are they including materials or not including the materials? All those kind of things. So everyone is giving you bids on the same information, and you're not getting all this stuff all over the place. As far as selecting bids with subcontractors, if you get the standard sort of like 3 bids, you definitely want to be going kind of mid-range. The reason you don't want to go with really low bids is that if that contractor for some reason can't do the project or something happens with that contractor, you've now submitted a price to your client that includes that low bid, but now you need to maybe hire someone else that's going to cost more, and now all your margins are gone essentially. Or possibly you're losing money depending on how much of a range of pricing that there is. So you typically want to choose somewhere around the middle bid, or at least not have the bottom pricing. Even if you plan to go with the cheaper bid that you get, you want to make sure that you've added additional markup or on top of that, so that if you do go with a different contractor, you have that room and not just having to go with that bottom price. Then you're going to get supplier pricing. This is going to be based off selection. So the clients are going to go through the design process. They're going to say, we want this kind of siding, we want this type of decking, we want this type of flooring, whatever it is, and you're going to need to get pricing from your supplier so you can build that into your estimate and get very specific with the costs of the project. Selections as well. This is typically going to go through the designer. but you will probably have some involvement with selections from a pricing standpoint, as well as like reaching out to suppliers, like I mentioned earlier. Upgrades are always great, so I like to have sort of a checklist that you provide to clients of upgrades that they may consider. This could be things like soundproofing walls, maybe in-floor heating, astronomical timers for lighting outside, maybe it's like landscape stuff. So whatever it may be, have a list of things because this can greatly increase the satisfaction or the experience of the completed project when clients do get these upgrades. But it's something that they may not have thought about, or they may not, initially want because it's like they're not sure about pricing. But come later on when they're, getting this and that and this, they may want to upgrade stuff in their project, which is good for everybody. Site testing and permitting. So during this detailed budgeting stage, the design should be at a place where you can send it out for permitting. And then also you want to do any site testing. So if it's, like if you need to do any testing for geological or maybe asbestos or whatever it may be, you want to get that done during this phase so that you know what it's going to cost if there are issues that come up. And then also, you always want to double check your accuracy. So ideally, you're going to have somebody else look at your budget for you. So you'll have gone through the estimate, you know everything. It's always good to get a second set of eyes. This could be a project manager, it could be senior person or estimator at your company, whatever it may be. Get a second set of eyes on the estimate because there's probably things that they forgot or you forgot or whoever's put it together. It's very common that you just don't see it because you're in the weeds, if you will. Someone new and fresh will be like, hey, we should word this differently. Are you sure about this? That number looks out of place and what have you, to double check the accuracy. Now we're going to move on to the proposal. So you've done all the legwork, the design is done, the final detailed budget is done. Now you need to be able to propose and sell the actual construction contract and move it into the real, nuts and bolts of what we do as builders to actually build the project. So some things you want to keep in mind for your proposal in the process is you definitely want to have some sort of cover letter that showcases your company. Shouldn't just be, a list of your estimate that you send to the client. Have something more for the cover letter as far as, a little bit of marketing stuff, a little bit of, thanks for asking us to bid on the project. This is the final, budget that we've come up with, whatever it may be, but it should be more to give it that polished professional look. You always want to be doing the proposal in a live meeting. Do not just email an estimate over to a client and then hopefully hear back from them, because that's a good way for them to ghost you or for them just to take forever to get back to you, right? As well as for them to say like, oh, we're not going to move ahead of it, we're going to go with someone else, or this is bad timing or whatever, right? Getting an email like that, you have no idea what's happening or why they chose not to move forward with the project, typically speaking. So live meeting, you're much better off to be able to walk through your estimate of like, these are all the line items, this is the cost of this and that. If you have detailed costing in there, and you can get their live feedback of, if they say it's, oh, this is, too high of a price, or we're not sure about this or that, you can walk through it, you can talk with them, you can get some feedback from them on the estimate and which way they're going, and you're in a much better position to then sell the construction contract and move forward with them if you can do it in a live meeting. Multi-line pricing, I know there's this both two sides of the coin as far as like, do we just give one final price? Your project is going to cost, $200,000 or $500,000, or do we do line item by line item with all the costs in there? It's kind of up to you. For me, I prefer more open book style of pricing, and I find that the customer is going to appreciate that more and have more trust. Of course, this does open the book for them to kind of dive into things and start asking about specific pricing. But if you've done your due diligence and you have like presented yourself in a professional manner, I find you'll attract clients and you'll be able to work with clients who are less concerned about individual small pricing and more about the project and the experience. And yeah, they may still have pricing concerns, but they're not going to want to dive into every little thing, right? But it does build a lot of trust when you can at least have the big sections of your estimate priced out individually instead of just one solid price at the bottom. You always want to include the plans and the schedules with your budget. So you shouldn't just have an estimate by itself and send that off or just show that, right? You want to have the plans and the schedule so that they realize that this is a full project. This isn't just a numbers thing. There's a schedule, there's plans, the design, it all comes together. And you as the builder are the kind of the one-stop shop facilitator that can see the entire picture and help guide them to that final product of the beautiful home or office space or remodel, whatever it is that they're looking to get done. On your proposal, make sure you include your qualifications and any warranty. So are your builder's license, if you're part of any chambers of commerce, if you've won any awards, whatever it may be, warranty, not all the nitty gritty, but like you have a 1 year warranty on workmanship, 5 years on foundation or roofing or whatever, right? So just a couple of line items that you include a warranty. This is how long. These are the kind of the big individual things that do get a warranty to give them more trust and just make the decision easier for them. And then finally, you're going to want to have inclusions and exclusions. So what is included is permanent costs included, is whatever it may be. You want to be very clear, like all materials. What is not included in this? What is excluded? That could be city upgrades if they need new sewer, water, electrical. Any kind of stuff from the city, whatever it may be. We've got, of course, all this stuff templated and built out. If you're interested in getting like this high level systems and everything all documented and built out for you, reach out to us. This is what we do. We help contractors get really polished, really refined with all their systems to have a great process that's high converting and brings in the right type of clients. But this is what you're going to want to include on your proposal. All right, so at this stage, you've essentially moved from getting a new lead to the whole process of going through the budgeting from rough to detailed to PCSA agreement to moving them into construction. Now I'm going to be sharing with you big mistakes that you want to avoid to make sure that you're not getting hung up or losing money on a project as you go through that whole process that I just showed you. So one thing which I mentioned kind of earlier is overestimating the rough budget. So you don't want to go over estimating on a rough budget, and you will tell the client, this is a rough budget. This is our best kind of scenario at this point. As we go through the selections, the design, the getting suppliers quotes and getting quotes from our sub trades and everything, the budget will fluctuate up and down and could change 5-10%, possibly potentially even more, depending on how things go and choices you make and all this kind of stuff. So you want to make sure that initial rough budget is fairly low, very basic, and you want to communicate that as far as expectations go, like this is our basic budget, this is the price. As of now, can fluctuate up and down, but over time, typically, as we get more prices, this could potentially go up. So you want to do that because you can scare people off very easily, and then it puts you back in that competition of like pricing wars instead of being, getting the PCSA and being their preferred builder to design and budget their project with. Waiting to systemize and delegate. So this is a huge mistake. You need to build a system around this right now, today, tomorrow, this week, as soon as possible. Again, if you need help with it, reach out to us. You need to build this system so you can delegate it because you will hit the ceiling. You can't manage projects, do estimating, do marketing, budgeting, talking with clients, checking financials, all this stuff as a business owner. You will never grow. Maybe you can build 1, 2, 3 homes a year or do a few larger projects or what have you, but you need to build a system around this first to help yourself to be able to do your job better if you're still filling all these roles in your business. But second, so you can start to delegate it. And the sooner you get a system in place, the sooner you can start to improve it to a point where you can easily hand this off to somebody else and delegate it to implement on your behalf. Winging labor, another quick way to lose money. You may be really good at like knowing like, okay, this kitchen remodel is going to take, the carpenters, whatever, 20 hours to install cabinets or 10 hours to whatever, do the demo or whatever it may be. Really think it through because it's very easy to wing labor and then often go over because you forgot something or didn't think it through. I like to do a mental picture in my head of like, okay, guys got to show up at site. They've got to unpack all their stuff. They've got to, figure out the plans. They've got to start getting into stuff. They got to put up their site protection, whatever it may be, right? So you're going to lose a few hours there. Then it's like they've got to, pull out the cabinets, take the packaging off, set it up, check the walls, level, whatever, right? So just kind of walk through and figure out how long is this going to take. And if you need to, ask someone who's there and doing the job. If you've got carpenters or foremen or project manager, they may be better suited to know how long something's going to take because they're not as invested in the business, and they don't have your mindset of like get shit done as soon as and quick as possible, and how you maybe did it 10 years ago or 20 years ago when guys could fly through it. It's a different world now. You have different employees, stuff happens at a different pace, right? So getting someone who's closer to the front lines to just get a double check on labor time or costs may be very helpful and will keep you from winging it and losing money. So no small project pricing. You should have kind of tiers of projects, and a small project to you is, could vary by the company. It could be 20,000, it could be 200,000, it could be 2 million. Whatever that small project kind of is, you need to be charging more for the project based off that threshold. So if you are a home builder and your typical home build is $1 million, if you get a project or a build that's less than, let's say, $700,000, maybe that's a small project and you need to increase your markup by potentially 5% or whatever it may be, because small projects still have a certain amount of overhead and just management no matter what size of the project. And you also want to be more competitive on the larger typical projects than you do on the smaller projects, just to kind of help you stay clear of being that small project builder, taking on too many small projects, being busy with that and not being able to have room for larger projects that come along. So definitely adjust your markup pricing based off the size of the project. If it's a really big project that you really want to get, maybe you can thin your margins a little bit, but don't go overboard. You should have kind of your base pricing that you're profitable at. And then if you have like a small project threshold, anything below that, add an extra 5%, maybe even 10% to the markup. No secondary review. So I mentioned that as far as double checking it, you should be double checking it yourself, but also make sure you have someone else in the company or that you trust to double check and review the estimate together. Quick 10-minute review is all you really need for someone else just to get a second set of eyes on it, make sure nothing's forgot or your pricing isn't out of whack. No risk assessment, very poor. I'm a culprit of this. I'm an optimist. I like to think that things will go well and everything's great. When in reality, shit comes up and things hit the fan, and you definitely need to be thinking forward of what are the risks on this project. Is it the client? Is it the location? Is it that maybe we haven't done this type of build before? Maybe we haven't used this material before, whatever it could be, right? So if you identify risks, like excavation is always risky. You never know what quite you're going to find under the soil and things like that. So what are the big risks here? And have you mitigated that in your estimate if something comes up, either with an exclusion, signifying, I like to put it right in the line item, allowance or risk, like just in full capitals, risk, whatever it may be. And you don't want to overuse this where you scare off the client, but at the same time, if you can identify risks in the client's project and no other builder, if they are getting competing bids, has brought up that risk, you look like the expert, and they'll feel more comfortable going ahead with you because you've identified it and you've brought it to their attention that, hey, professional opinion, this is a potential risk on your project. And, instead of having that conversation later when it comes up, we've identified it now. And then finally, outdated pricing, especially on larger projects or home builds. If you've got a lengthy process of design and then planning and permitting, and they may not be able to start right away, the pricing that you give them now will be different from a year from now when maybe they're ready to move ahead with their project, or 6 months or what have you. And if you're basing your pricing on the project you did last year and now you're projecting ahead the pricing, in 6 months or 1 year from now when they start the build, that's going to be vastly different, and you could be out 10-15% depending on fluctuations in price. So you have to be able to be aware of that and not be using outdated pricing, but also be thinking of the future of like, is there a potential that pricing could rise? What is typical? How much do I expect it to rise? Because that can quickly eat into your profits if you are pricing on outdated pricing. So now you've got a complete estimating system. As mentioned before, check out the links in the description below. There is a free PCSA, pre-construction agreement guide to help you build out a pre-construction agreement offer for your company, as well as some free estimating templates to do with the home walkthroughs and just building out your line item estimating templates. So tons of value there. Go click through the links and get those for yourself. I'll see you on the next video.